How did it come to this? How did the quiet accountant I married become the strategic mastermind who just destroyed my entire world with legal precision? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The lawyer's envelope felt like ice in my hands as I stared at the divorce papers spread across my office desk. My name, Zuleika Merrin, was typed in cold black letters next to words like adultery, abandonment, and custody modification. Just 6 months ago, I was laughing at my husband Henry for being too soft, too boring, and everything I thought I didn't want. Now I'm sitting here, realizing that the man I mocked had been quietly collecting evidence of every cruel joke, every late night, every lie I told. "Henry, can you grab us some wine from the kitchen?" I called out, not even looking up from my phone, as my sister Callie and I sat on the living room couch. It was a typical Saturday evening, and Callie had come over for our weekly gossip session. "Sure, honey," Henry replied from his home office, where he'd been working on some client files. Even on weekends, he was buried in spreadsheets and tax documents. Callie rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, Zuleika, how do you stand it? He's like a trained puppy." "Sure, honey, yes, honey, whatever you want, honey," she mimicked in a high-pitched voice. I giggled, glancing toward the hallway to make sure Henry wasn't coming yet. "Tell me about it. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be with a real man, you know, someone with some fire. Remember Jake Morrison from high school? Now that guy had testosterone. I saw him at the grocery store last week, and damn." Callie fanned herself with her hand. "Or that bartender at Pulse downtown," I said, thinking of Damon Knox. I'd been there last weekend with some coworkers, and he'd been flirting with me all night. The way he looked at me, like he wanted to devour me, was so different from Henry's gentle, respectful gaze. Henry appeared in the doorway with 2 glasses of wine, and I quickly changed my expression to an innocent smile. "Thanks, babe." As he handed us the glasses, Callie couldn't resist continuing. "Henry, don't you ever want to, I don't know, go skydiving or something? Live a little?" Henry smiled awkwardly. "I prefer keeping my feet on the ground, actually. Besides, someone has to be responsible around here." "Responsible," Callie repeated, making it sound like a disease. "Zuleika, you're 34. You should be having adventures, not filing joint tax returns." I saw Henry's face fall slightly, but I was caught up in Callie's energy. "I know, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm married to my accountant instead of my husband." "Oh, wait," I laughed. "I am married to an accountant." "Mom, can I have some juice?" Maya's voice came from the kitchen, breaking the tension. "I'll get it," Henry said quietly, walking away. Callie leaned closer to me. "Seriously, Zuleika, you're wasting your prime years. Look at you. You're gorgeous. You've got that customer service manager job. You could have any guy you want." My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Damon. "Hey, beautiful. When are you coming back to see me? I've got a new cocktail I want you to try." I grinned, showing Callie the message. She squealed softly. "Now that's what I'm talking about. When's the last time Henry sent you something like that?" I thought about it. Henry sent me practical texts about picking up groceries or reminding me about Maya's parent-teacher conferences. Sweet, but hardly exciting. From the kitchen, I could hear Henry's gentle voice talking to Maya about her day at school. He was such a good father, always patient and attentive. But listening to him now, all I could think about was how predictable he was, how safe and boring our life had become. "I deserve some excitement," I whispered to Callie. "I mean, I work hard, I take care of Maya, I keep this house running. Don't I deserve to feel alive?" Callie nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. Text him back." I typed quickly. "Soon. Can't wait to see what you've got for me." When Henry returned, he glanced at my phone screen just as I was hitting send. His expression shifted, but he didn't say anything. He just sat down in his chair across from us, suddenly looking very tired. Everything okay, Dad? Maya asked, coming into the room with her juice box. Everything's fine, sweetheart, he said, but his voice sounded strained. The rest of the evening felt different. Henry was quieter than usual, and I caught him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When Callie left around 10, he helped me clean up the wine glasses without his usual cheerful chatter. Zuleika, he said as we were getting ready for bed, do you really see me as just an accountant? I was brushing my teeth and almost choked on the toothpaste. What do you mean? Earlier with Callie, the way you talked about me. Do you really think I'm that boring? I rinsed my mouth, buying time. Henry, you know Callie. She just likes to stir things up. I was just playing along. But you laughed, he said quietly. You agreed with her. Oh my God, you're being too sensitive, I said, turning to face him. It was just sister talk. You know I love you. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. I just want you to be happy, Zuleika. If you need something different, something more exciting, maybe we could... Henry, stop overthinking everything, I interrupted. This is exactly what I mean. You analyze everything to death. Sometimes a joke is just a joke. He went quiet after that, and we went to bed without our usual goodnight kiss. As I lay there in the dark, I felt my phone buzz under my pillow. Another message from Damon. I smiled in the darkness, my heart racing with anticipation. The bass was pounding through the floor of Pulse nightclub as I made my way to the bar. It was Friday night, and I'd told Henry I was having drinks with co-workers to celebrate someone's promotion. Technically true, my colleague Janet had gotten a promotion, but she'd gone home hours ago. There's my favorite customer, Damon said with that crooked smile that made my stomach flip. He was wiping down glasses, his muscled forearms moving with practiced ease. At 29, he had this effortless confidence that Henry had never possessed. Hey yourself, I replied, sliding onto a bar stool. So, what's this special cocktail you mentioned? Something I created just for you, he said, leaning across the bar so I could smell his cologne. I call it Dangerous Curves. I laughed, feeling more alive than I had in months. That's terrible, but effective, he winked, starting to mix ingredients with flashy movements that drew attention from other customers. The drink was strong and sweet, and I felt the alcohol warming my blood. Damon kept finding excuses to come talk to me between other customers, each conversation lasting a little longer than necessary. So, what does your husband think about you being out so late? He asked during a slower moment. He's probably asleep already, I said, checking my phone. It was nearly midnight, and I had 3 missed calls from Henry. He's not really the nightlife type. His loss, Damon said, his eyes traveling over my body in a way that made me feel desirable and reckless. My phone rang again, Henry calling. I declined the call and put the phone face down on the bar. Problems at home? Damon asked. No problems, I said quickly. He just worries too much. He thinks something terrible is going to happen every time I'm out past 10. Maybe something terrible should happen, Damon said with a devilish grin. I felt my cheeks flush. Maybe it should. The club was getting more crowded, and Damon had to attend to other customers. I nursed my drink and watched him work, admiring the way he commanded attention. Women were constantly trying to flirt with him, but he kept glancing back at me, making me feel special. Around 1 a.m., his shift ended, and he came around to my side of the bar. Want to get some air? He asked. We walked outside into the cool night air, and he lit a cigarette. You know, I've been thinking about you all week. Have you? I asked, my heart pounding. Yeah, you're different from most of the women who come in here. You've got class, intelligence, but there's something else, something wild underneath that professional exterior. I felt intoxicated by his words, by the way he saw me. Henry never talked to me like this, like I was mysterious and exciting. I should probably get home, I said, but I made no move to leave. Should you? He asked, stepping closer. Or should you do what you want for once instead of what you should do? My phone buzzed with a text from Henry. Zuleika, I'm worried. Please call me when you get this. I showed Damon the message. See what I mean? He treats me like a child. You're not a child, Damon said, his voice low and intimate. You're a woman who deserves to be appreciated. I felt myself leaning toward him, drawn by his confidence and the thrill of doing something forbidden. But then my phone rang again. This time it was Eleanor, Henry's mother. Shit, I muttered, answering reluctantly. Hello, Eleanor. Zuleika, thank God. Henry called me. He's worried sick. Maya woke up with a nightmare and has been asking for you. Where are you? The mention of Maya sobered me slightly. I'm just out with co-workers. I'll be home soon. It's almost 2 a.m, dear. Don't you think? I'll be home soon, I repeated, hanging up. Damon was watching me with amusement. Mother-in-law giving you grief? Everyone in Henry's family thinks they can control me, I said, feeling defensive and rebellious. Maybe it's time to show them they can't, he suggested. I looked at him, this confident, dangerous man who saw me as exciting rather than responsible. Maybe it is. I typed out a quick text to Henry. Everything's fine, don't wait up. Then I turned off my phone and looked at Damon. So, what did you have in mind? The smile he gave me was full of promise and trouble. We talked for another hour outside the club, and with each passing minute, I felt further away from my life as Henry's wife and Maya's mother. Damon told me stories about traveling, about living in different cities, about adventures I'd never had. I've been in the same routine for 8 years, I found myself saying. Work, home, family dinners, PTA meetings. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing. You don't have to disappear, he said. You just have to decide what you want. When I finally got home at 3 a.m., Henry was waiting up in the living room. He looked exhausted and worried. Zuleika, where have you been? I called you 15 times. I told you out with co-workers, I said, trying to sound casual despite the guilt gnawing at my stomach. Until 3 a.m, on a work night. God, Henry, I'm an adult. I don't need a curfew. He studied my face in the dim light. You've been drinking. So, I'm allowed to have a few drinks with friends. Maya was scared. She had a nightmare about you not coming home. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit, but I pushed the feeling away. Well, I did come home. Everything's fine. Henry looked like he wanted to say more, but he just nodded. I'm glad you're safe. I was just worried. As I got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright with excitement I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in forever, I felt like myself again. Not just Henry's wife or Maya's mother, but Zuleika. I climbed into bed next to Henry, who pretended to be asleep. But I could tell from his breathing that he was awake, probably replaying the evening and wondering what was happening to us. I closed my eyes and thought about Damon's hands, his voice, the way he made me feel alive and dangerous and free. What I didn't know was that Henry's dashcam had automatically recorded my arrival time, and that he'd already started to suspect that something was very wrong with our marriage. Eleanor's dining room was set with her good china, and the smell of pot roast filled the air. It was Sunday family dinner, a weekly tradition that I'd grown to dread. Henry's mother always found subtle ways to criticize me, and today I was feeling particularly defensive after my late nights at Pulse had become more frequent. Zuleika, you look tired, dear, Eleanor said as she carved the roast. Are you getting enough sleep? I'm fine, I replied curtly, taking a large sip of wine. Maya was coloring quietly at the kids' table Eleanor had set up, and Gavin was discussing work with Henry. Callie had come along as my moral support, though she seemed more interested in her phone than the conversation. Henry tells me you've been working late a lot, Eleanor continued, her tone carefully neutral. The customer service department has been swamped, I lied smoothly. You know how it is, management expects us to do more with less. Henry glanced at me but didn't say anything. He'd been increasingly quiet over the past few weeks, and I'd caught him looking at me with this strange, analytical expression, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Well, I just worry about Maya, Eleanor said, passing the potatoes. Children need stability, routine. When parents are out all hours. Eleanor, I interrupted, setting down my fork with more force than necessary. I think I know how to take care of my own daughter. The table went quiet. Gavin cleared his throat uncomfortably. Of course you do, dear, Eleanor said carefully. I just meant... You meant that I'm not a good enough mother, right? That's what this family really thinks of me. I was getting worked up, the wine making me more combative than usual. Zuleika, Henry said quietly, Mom didn't say that. Oh, so now you're taking her side? I turned on him, seeing an opportunity to redirect the conversation away from my late nights. You always do this, Henry. Your mother makes some passive-aggressive comment, and you just sit there like a bump on a log. I'm not taking anyone's side, Henry replied, his voice still calm but with an edge I rarely heard. I'm just trying to keep the peace. Keep the peace, I repeated mockingly. That's your answer to everything, isn't it? Never stand up for your wife, never show any backbone. God, sometimes I wonder what I ever saw in you. Callie looked up from her phone, sensing drama. Zuleika's right, she chimed in. Henry, you do let people walk all over you. Eleanor's face had gone pale. I think we should change the subject. No, let's not change the subject, I said, the wine and weeks of frustration boiling over. Let's talk about how Henry's idea of excitement is organizing his sock drawer. How he's never spontaneous, never passionate about anything except tax codes and investment portfolios. Mom, Maya said quietly from the kids' table, why are you yelling? I'm not yelling, sweetie, I said, trying to moderate my tone, but still feeling the need to make my point. Mummy's just having a grown-up conversation. Henry stood up abruptly. That's enough. Oh, now you want to show some authority. I laughed bitterly. Where was this energy when your mother was questioning my parenting? My mother asked if you were getting enough sleep, Henry said, his voice deadly quiet. That's not questioning your parenting. That's showing concern for someone she cares about. Someone she cares about, I scoffed. She's never liked me, and you know it. Eleanor stood up too, her hands shaking slightly. I have always tried to welcome you into this family, Zuleika, but lately you've been hostile and distant. You come home at all hours, you're short-tempered with Maya, and now you're attacking Henry for no reason. No reason? I felt cornered and lashed out. The reason is that I married a man who lets everyone else fight his battles for him. I married someone who's more interested in spreadsheets than in his own wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya had stopped coloring and was staring at us with wide, frightened eyes. Henry looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something change in his expression. Something hardened. You're right, he said finally. I do avoid confrontation. I do try to keep the peace. But you know what, Zuleika? I do that because I love my family and I want us to be happy. I work hard to provide for you and Maya. I come home every night. I help with homework and housework and everything else that makes a marriage work. He paused, running his hand through his hair. But apparently, that makes me weak in your eyes. Apparently, caring about my family and wanting stability makes me boring. Henry, I started, suddenly realizing I'd gone too far. No, let me finish, he said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. If you're so unhappy with the man you married, if you find me so disappointing, then maybe we need to have a serious conversation about what you actually want. He walked over to Maya, who was now crying quietly. Come on, sweetheart, let's go home. But we haven't had dessert yet, Maya sniffled. We'll have ice cream at home, Henry said gently, helping her with her coat. Eleanor looked at me with disappointment and anger. I hope you're proud of yourself, she said quietly. As they were leaving, Gavin pulled me aside. Zuleika, what the hell was that? Henry's a good man, and he doesn't deserve to be humiliated in front of his family. He embarrassed himself by not standing up to his mother, I shot back, but the words felt hollow now. His mother asked if you were tired, Gavin said incredulously, and you turned it into World War III. After they left, Callie and I sat in Eleanor's living room while she cleaned up the kitchen with sharp, angry movements. "Well, that was dramatic," Callie said, trying to lighten the mood. But I felt sick to my stomach, the look in Henry's eyes when he stood up to me. I'd never seen him like that before. And Maya's tears. God, what was I doing? My phone buzzed with a text from Damon. "Missing you, beautiful. When can I see you again?" I stared at the message, feeling the familiar thrill of excitement mixed with a new emotion I didn't want to acknowledge. Guilt. "You okay?" Callie asked. "Yeah," I lied. "I'm fine." But as we drove home in silence, I couldn't shake the image of Henry's face, or the way Maya had looked at me like she didn't recognize her own mother. When I got home, Henry was in his office with the door closed. I could hear him on the phone, but his voice was too low for me to make out the words. I went to bed alone that night, and for the first time in weeks, I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. But when Damon texted again later, asking me to meet him the next evening, I found myself typing yes before I could think too hard about it. The hotel room was dimly lit, and I could hear my heart pounding as Damon closed the door behind us. We'd been building up to this moment for weeks, stolen conversations at the bar, increasingly flirtatious texts, and now this. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, but his hands were already on my waist, pulling me closer. "I'm sure," I whispered, though part of me felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold. What happened next was everything I'd been craving. Passion, intensity, the feeling of being desired rather than simply loved. Damon was nothing like Henry. He was demanding, confident, making me feel like a woman instead of just a wife and mother. Afterward, as we lay in the tangled hotel sheets, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and terror. "That was incredible," Damon said, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign on the wall. "Yeah," I agreed, though something felt different now. The anticipation had been replaced by a strange emptiness. "So what now?" I asked, tracing patterns on his chest. He shrugged. "Now we see where this goes." It wasn't exactly the romantic declaration I'd been hoping for, but I pushed the disappointment aside. This was about freedom, about feeling alive again. I couldn't expect it to be like a fairy tale. I got home that evening to find Henry making dinner while Maya did homework at the kitchen table. "How was work?" he asked without looking up from the stove. "Fine," I said quickly. "Busy day." "Mum, Mrs. Peterson says I need help with my math homework," Maya said, looking up at me with hopeful eyes. "Ask your father," I said, heading toward the stairs. "I need to shower." In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. My hair was mussed, my lipstick gone, and I could still smell Damon's cologne on my skin. I looked like a woman who'd been with another man, and the thought both thrilled and terrified me. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. I'd meet Damon at the hotel, or sometimes we'd just talk at the bar while he worked. He was everything Henry wasn't: unpredictable, exciting, dangerous. But he was also increasingly distant after our encounters, treating me more like a regular customer when other people were around. "Are you seeing other women?" I asked him one night after we'd been together. "What kind of question is that?" he replied, getting dressed. "You're married, remember? It's not like we're exclusive." The casual way he said it stung, but I told myself this was what I wanted. No strings attached, just pure excitement. At home, things were deteriorating rapidly. Henry had become increasingly suspicious, asking pointed questions about my whereabouts and checking my phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I'd gotten better at deleting messages and covering my tracks, but the constant deception was exhausting. "Zuleika, we need to talk," Henry said one evening, after Maya had gone to bed. My stomach dropped. "About what?" "About us, about what's happening to our marriage." "Nothing's happening," I said defensively. "You're being paranoid." "Am I? You're never home, you're distant with Maya, you barely speak to me unless it's to criticize something I've done." "I'm just stressed with work," I lied. "The new management is really demanding." Henry studied my face with that analytical look I'd grown to hate. Is there someone else? The question hung in the air between us like a bomb waiting to explode. How can you even ask me that? I said, going on the offensive. I work my ass off all day, I take care of Maya, I manage this household, and this is the thanks I get. Accusations and suspicion. I'm not accusing you of anything, Henry said quietly. I'm asking because I love you, and I want to save our marriage. Our marriage doesn't need saving, I snapped. It needs you to stop being so controlling and paranoid. But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. Our marriage was falling apart, and it was my fault. The guilt was eating away at me, making me lash out at the one person who'd never done anything but love me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Henry slept beside me. His breathing was steady and peaceful, and I found myself remembering our early days together, how safe and cherished he'd made me feel, how he'd proposed with a ring he'd saved for months to buy, how he'd cried when Maya was born. My phone buzzed with a message from Damon. Can't do tomorrow night, got other plans. No explanation, no apology, just a casual dismissal. I stared at the message, feeling something crack inside my chest. The next day at work, I found myself telling my colleague, Janet, about my problems. Sounds like you're having a midlife crisis, she said over lunch. But Zuleika, be careful. Henry's a good guy, and Maya needs stability. I know he's a good guy, I said miserably. That's the problem. I feel like I'm suffocating in all that goodness. Maybe you should try counseling, Janet suggested. Work on things before they get worse. But I wasn't ready to give up my double life yet. The excitement of sneaking around, of having this secret part of myself that belonged to no one else, it was addictive. That evening, I came home to find Henry in his office again, door closed, speaking in low tones on the phone. When he saw me, he quickly ended the call. Who was that? I asked. Work stuff, he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. For the first time, it occurred to me that Henry might be keeping secrets too. The thought should have made me feel guilty, but instead, it made me feel justified. If he was hiding things from me, then I had every right to hide things from him. I texted Damon, "Are you free tonight? I need to see you." His response came an hour later. "Sorry, babe. Busy week. Maybe next weekend." I stared at the message, feeling dismissed and used. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the one in control, the one calling the shots. But as I looked around at my life, at my distant husband, my confused daughter, my own reflection in the hallway mirror, I realized I wasn't in control of anything anymore. The break room at work had always been my sanctuary, a place where I could vent about my problems and get sympathy from my colleagues. But lately, even that was becoming complicated. "So, Henry's being weird again?" asked Janet, stirring sugar into her coffee. "He's always been weird," I said, louder than necessary. "Last night, he reorganized the spice rack alphabetically. Who does that?" A few other women from customer service had gathered around our usual table, and I found myself performing for them, exaggerating Henry's quirks for laughs. "And then," I continued, "he asked me if I wanted to go bird-watching this weekend." "Bird-watching? Like we're 70 years old?" The women chuckled politely, but I noticed Sarah from accounting looked uncomfortable. "I mean, the man has no spontaneity," I went on. "No passion. He's like living with a very polite robot who pays taxes on time." "Zuleika," Janet said quietly, "maybe you shouldn't..." "Shouldn't what? Tell the truth about my own husband?" I was getting worked up, the stress of my double life making me more aggressive than usual. He's a good provider, sure, but God, he's boring. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be with a real man, you know? The silence that followed was awkward. Sarah excused herself and left the break room, and the other women started dispersing back to their desks. "Zuleika, can I talk to you privately?" Janet asked once we were alone. "What's wrong with everyone today?" I asked defensively. "People are starting to talk," Janet said carefully. About you staying out late, about the things you say about Henry. And yesterday, Marcus from IT said he saw you at that downtown club with some guy. My blood ran cold. Marcus doesn't know what he's talking about. Zuleika, I'm your friend, so I'm going to be straight with you. Whatever's going on, you need to be careful. This company doesn't tolerate drama, and if word gets back to management about you bad-mouthing your husband and running around— I'm not running around, I snapped, and what I do in my personal time is nobody's business. But Janet's words scared me more than I wanted to admit. If people at work were talking, how long before someone who knew Henry heard the rumors? That afternoon, I got a text from my mother. Zuleika, Mrs. Henderson from down the street, mentioned seeing you out very late on a work night. Is everything okay with you and Henry? I stared at the message in horror. Mrs. Henderson was the neighborhood gossip, and if she was talking, everyone would know soon. I called my mother immediately. Mom, whatever Mrs. Henderson thinks she saw— Honey, I'm not judging, my mother interrupted, but her tone was strained. I just want to make sure you're making good choices. Henry's a wonderful man, and Maya needs— Everyone keeps telling me what Maya needs, I said angrily. What about what I need? What do you need, Zuleika? My mother asked quietly. I couldn't answer that question because I wasn't sure anymore. That evening, Gavin called while I was making dinner. Zuleika, we need to talk, he said without preamble. About what? About the rumors going around. About you and some bartender. I nearly dropped the phone. What rumors? Come on, Zuleika. Half the neighborhood is talking. Someone saw you at that club downtown, and it wasn't a work event. People need to mind their own business, I said, but my voice was shaking. Maya is my niece, Gavin said firmly. Henry is my brother-in-law, and I care about this family. If you are having an affair, you need to end it now before you destroy everything. I'm not— I started to lie, but the words died in my throat. Zuleika, I've known you for 8 years. I can hear it in your voice. Whatever this is, it's not worth losing your family over. After he hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands. The walls were closing in around me, and I felt trapped by my own choices. When Henry came home from work, he was quieter than usual. He helped Maya with her homework while I finished dinner, but I could feel him watching me with that analytical expression. How was your day? He asked during dinner. Fine, I said shortly. Anything interesting happen at work? The way he asked made me suspicious. Why? Just making conversation, he said, but something in his tone made me think he already knew about the office gossip. After Maya went to bed, Henry disappeared into his office again. I could hear him on the phone, speaking in low, serious tones. When I tried to listen at the door, he stopped talking. Who keeps calling you? I asked when he finally came out. Work stuff, he said, the same non-answer he'd been giving for weeks. That night I texted Damon, Can we meet tomorrow? I really need to see you. His response came the next morning. Things are getting complicated, Zuleika. Maybe we should cool it for a while. I stared at the message in disbelief. After everything I'd risked, everything I'd sacrificed, he was just going to walk away. I called him immediately. What do you mean, cool it? Look, you're a great woman, but you've got a lot of drama going on. I'm not looking for that kind of complication. Drama? I repeated incredulously. I left my family for you. You left your family for yourself, he said bluntly. Don't put that on me. I never promised you anything. The line went dead, and I realized with crystal clarity that I'd been played. Damon had never seen me as anything more than a married woman looking for excitement. I'd been convenient, available, and now that things were getting messy, he was cutting me loose. I sat in my car in the office parking lot, crying and trying to figure out how my life had gotten so completely out of control. When I finally went inside, there was an envelope on my desk with my name written in official-looking type. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were divorce papers. The law office conference room was sterile and intimidating, with its polished mahogany table and wall of legal books. I sat across from Henry, barely recognizing the man I'd been married to for 8 years. He was wearing his best suit, his hair neatly combed, and he had a leather folder in front of him that he hadn't opened yet. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Hawkins, sat beside him with her own stack of documents. My hastily hired attorney, David Chen, looked nervous and underprepared next to her. "Mrs. Merrin," Patricia began, "we're here today to discuss the terms of dissolution of your marriage to Mr. Henry Merrin. Before we begin negotiations, I think it's important that you understand the evidence we've compiled regarding your conduct during the marriage." My mouth went dry. "Evidence?" Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Let's start with the timeline, shall we?" She spread out a series of photographs on the table. The first was a screenshot of text messages, my text messages with Damon, messages I thought I'd deleted. "These were recovered from your phone's cloud backup," Patricia explained calmly. Mr. Merrin had access to the family account. I stared at the messages in horror. There they were in black and white. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Henry doesn't understand me like you do. I wish I could just disappear with you." "How did you—" I started. "Your husband is an accountant, Mrs. Merrin," Patricia continued. "He's very good with details and digital records. Shall we continue?" The next item was a hotel receipt with my name on it, dated 3 weeks ago. "The Riverside Inn, room 237. You paid with your credit card." Then came the dashcam footage. Patricia had brought a laptop, and she played a video of me arriving home at 3:17 a.m., clearly intoxicated, stumbling as I got out of my car. "This was recorded automatically by the camera Mr. Merrin installed for insurance purposes," she explained, "but the worst was yet to come." She played an audio recording of the family dinner at Eleanor's house, my voice, loud and cruel, humiliating Henry in front of his family. "Sometimes I wonder what I ever saw in you," my recorded voice said, and I flinched at how vicious I sounded. "Mr. Merrin began recording family interactions after you became increasingly hostile and verbally abusive," Patricia explained. "He was concerned about the effect your behavior was having on your daughter." "This is illegal," I protested, looking at my lawyer for support. David Chen cleared his throat. "Actually, in this state, recording conversations in your own home is perfectly legal, especially when there are concerns about child welfare." Patricia continued her presentation. "We also have security footage from your workplace showing you meeting with Mr. Knox during your lunch breaks, as well as testimony from several co-workers about your inappropriate comments regarding your marriage." She pulled out another document. "This is a report from Maya's school counselor. Your daughter has been acting out in class, showing signs of anxiety and stress. When asked about home life, she said, and I quote, 'Mommy is always angry at Daddy, and she doesn't come home at night anymore.' That hit me like a physical blow." "Maya said that?" "Your 7-year-old daughter is aware that something is wrong in her home environment," Patricia said. "She's been having nightmares and difficulty concentrating in school." I looked at Henry for the first time since we'd sat down. His face was composed, but I could see the pain in his eyes. "Henry," I said desperately, "we can work this out. We can go to counseling." "We're past that point, Zuleika," he said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since we'd arrived. Patricia opened another folder. "Mr. Merrin is seeking primary custody of Maya, with supervised visitation for you until you complete a substance abuse evaluation and anger management counseling." "Substance abuse?" I protested. "I don't have a drinking problem." "The dashcam footage shows you returning home intoxicated on multiple occasions," Patricia replied, "and several witnesses can testify to your drinking behavior at the nightclub." She laid out more documents. "Mr. Merrin is also seeking division of assets, including the family home, retirement accounts, and custody-related support. However, given your adultery and the emotional harm caused to both Mr. Merrin and your daughter, he's requesting that your share be reduced accordingly." "This is insane," I said, turning to my lawyer. "Can they do this?" David looked uncomfortable. Zuleika, the evidence is quite comprehensive. Adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state, and it can affect property division and custody decisions. Mr. Merrin has been more than fair, Patricia continued. He's not seeking alimony, despite being the primary breadwinner. He's not trying to cut you out of Maya's life completely. He simply wants to protect his daughter and move forward with his life. I felt the room spinning around me. Henry, please, I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I love you. Henry finally looked directly at me. Do you, Zuleika? Because for months, you've told everyone who would listen how boring I am, how disappointed you are in our marriage, how much you wish you were with someone else. You got your wish. I was just frustrated. I didn't mean it. You humiliated me in front of my family, Henry continued, his voice steady but filled with hurt. You neglected our daughter. You lied to me every day for months. And when I tried to talk to you about our problems, you told me I was being too sensitive. Patricia pulled out one final document. This is the custody agreement Mr. Merrin is proposing. You would have Maya every other weekend and one evening per week, pending completion of the required counseling programs. Every other weekend? I gasped. She's my daughter. A daughter you've been neglecting while you pursued your affair, Patricia said bluntly. Mr. Merrin has been handling the majority of parenting responsibilities for months while you were otherwise occupied. I looked around the room desperately. Eleanor was sitting in the corner. I hadn't even noticed her before. She looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and pity. Even your own family has distanced themselves from you, Patricia noted. Your parents declined to provide a character reference, and your sister Callie's statement was less than supportive. Callie gave a statement. She admitted that she encouraged your behavior and that she was aware of your affair, Patricia replied. She seemed to think it was amusing until the legal consequences became apparent. The reality of my situation finally hit me. I had no allies left. Damon had abandoned me. My family was embarrassed by my behavior. My co-workers were gossiping about me. And my husband, the man I'd mocked for being weak, had systematically documented my betrayal with the precision of the accountant he was. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Henry leaned forward. I want you to sign the papers, Zuleika. I want you to get the help you need, and I want you to let Maya have some stability in her life. And if I don't sign, Patricia smiled coldly. Then we go to court, and all of this evidence becomes public record. Your employer will be subpoenaed, your affair partner will be deposed, and Maya will potentially be subjected to a lengthy custody battle. Is that really what you want? I thought about Maya, my sweet 7-year-old who just wanted her parents to stop fighting. I thought about Henry, who had loved me faithfully for 8 years, while I threw it all away for a bartender who didn't even care enough to return my calls. I thought about the woman I used to be before I became so bitter and selfish, and I wondered if there was any way back to her. Where do I sign? I asked. Patricia slid the documents across the table. As I picked up the pen, Henry spoke one last time. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Zuleika. I really do. But I can't sacrifice Maya's well-being or my own sanity while you figure it out. I signed my name on line after line, officially ending the marriage I'd destroyed through my own choices. When it was done, I sat back in the chair, feeling completely empty. Henry gathered his papers and stood up. The moving truck will come for your things on Saturday. You can stay at the house until then. Henry, I said one last time, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He paused at the door and looked back at me. I know you are, Zuleika, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room with my lawyer, staring at my copy of the divorce papers. What happens now? I asked. Now you start over, David said simply, and hopefully you make better choices this time. I walked out of that law office a divorced woman with limited custody of my daughter and a reputation in ruins. The man I'd mocked for being weak had outmaneuvered me completely, and I had no one to blame but myself. As I sat in my car in the parking lot, I realized that Henry had been strong all along. Strong enough to document my betrayal while still trying to save our marriage. Strong enough to protect our daughter when I failed to do so. Strong enough to walk away when I proved I wasn't worth fighting for. I had confused kindness with weakness, and it cost me everything.